Meanwhile, surveillance video shows children running through an apartment complex parking lot in Lindenwold, New Jersey, some yelling "ICE, ICE," as federal immigration agents carried out an operation nearby. The 4th and 5th graders had been waiting for their school bus when multiple law enforcement vehicles arrived, sparking panic and confusion. You see them running there. 10-year-old Dylan, a U.S. citizen, told CBS News the morning started like any other until classmates began shouting.
Out of nowhere, people would just start running, saying that ICE is over there, and everybody was running, and we all were scared.
Dylan describes a chaotic scene. He told us agents started following him as he ran home. In this home security video, Dylan is frantically banging on the door, pleading for his mom to let him in.
Were you worried that ICE was going to try to get inside your home?
Yes.
The Lindenwold School District told families the presence of several enforcement vehicles caused significant fear and confusion, and that the bus driver circled back to make sure students were transported safely. The district emphasized that ICE agents were not at the schools themselves. Democratic Congressman Donald Norcross of New Jersey is calling for transparency now, telling CBS News DHS has to come forward, be transparent. If you're doing the right thing, then there should be no problem. About 300 people gathered in Lindenwold on Friday following that incident in support of the town's Latino community. One first-time protester, fighting back tears, said he never wants to see kids running from their own government again.
So I've never protested before in my entire life, but sorry. I watched 4th and 5th grade kids run away from our own government. I never want to see that again. And I'm not going to stand by and watch my neighbors run away scared. That's not Camden County. That's not New Jersey. It's not the United States.
It honestly gives me chills watching that man out there feeling so motivated to protest and just register the kind of person that he wants to be and the kind of community he wants to protect. But let's stay focused on the aspect of the deportation policy when it comes to kids, because there's new reporting from the Bulwark that's raising serious questions about conditions inside the Dilley Immigration Processing Center in Texas, where families say kids are suffering. One case involved an 18-month-old girl who was hospitalized for respiratory failure. She was then sent back to detention and allegedly denied her prescribed medication. The child was released only after an emergency court filing. Then there's another story, a 13-year-old girl who reportedly attempted self-harm after months in custody and a denied asylum claim. Her treatment for self-harm seemed to be exclusively a prescription for sleeping pills. Another woman, detained while awaiting a breast cancer biopsy, says she's not consistently receiving her medication. Earlier, I spoke with the author of that article, national immigration correspondent for the Bulwark, Adrian Carrasquillo, about those being held at Dilley.
The face of mass deportation now is not these criminals, these violent, hardened criminals that we were promised, but it is children and families and parents being taken from communities who have roots in these communities. There's people who have humanitarian parole, others who are married to U.S. citizens. There's pregnant women giving birth to newborn babies inside this facility.
So, John, as we grapple with the question of can shame motivate change, is this a moment where, maybe not around Epstein, but around immigration, when we hear these stories inside places like Dilley, does that spur the administration to change? Or is it just that they put a different face like Tom Homan on their immigration effort and continue doing the same thing?
You know, Allie, I think there are a couple things to say about this aspect of the story. One is obviously we're building tons of new ICE detention facilities. You know, there's been controversy about that. I know you've covered it. That's one of the new focuses in this story. And I think it's one of the great, unlike what happened in Minneapolis, where we got to see so much, you know, the deployment of so many cell phone video cameras, so many people who are out taking images of what's going on there. What's happening in those detention facilities is largely happening behind closed doors. We have very little visibility into it. And if you imagine, just without, you know, being able to, the reporting that we're reading, like the reporting from the Bulwark, is terrifying. But, you know, it's just a drop in the bucket. If you think about what happened in Minneapolis on the streets, imagine, well, that's what's happening in clear public view. What's happening behind closed doors one imagines, one can reasonably speculate, is considerably worse. And so I think there's going to be a lot of focus on this particular issue. I don't know. I kind of don't want to make predictions about what the administration is going to do. I think that the politics of this have been nothing but bad for the Republican Party and for Donald Trump. Their numbers have shown that. It's been pretty incontrovertible. The question is when, not so much shame, because I think on the part of the administration, at least, there is not a lot of shame when it comes to this policy. And I do think that your earlier suggestion and that Tom Homan's suggestion that we're going to see more ICE raids, that every one of these cities from Los Angeles to Washington to Chicago to Minneapolis has been a dress rehearsal for the next city. I don't think there's any reason not to think that there's going to be another city after Minneapolis. I don't think shame is the way that's going to stop them from doing any of these things. I do think that political pressure, whether that's the kind of pressure that the House or that Senate Democrats are putting right now in terms of trying to get ICE reformed through the budgeting process and through the partial government shutdown that we're seeing, or whether it's at the ballot box fear of what's going to happen come November. Because if Republicans and Donald Trump stay on the path they're on right now, they're, I think, going to pay a pretty significant price for these policies at the polls in November. And that is the one thing that might motivate some kind of change.
Yeah, it's also a good reminder the Department of Homeland Security is actually shut down right now because they failed to meet the deadline on Friday, and they didn't negotiate on Department of Homeland Security funding. And then when it comes to getting inside these detention centers, the only way we know this information is from investigative reporters like Adrian, but also the investigative outlet ProPublica, which reported that more than 3,500 people have been held at Dilley since it reopened. More than half of them children, and at least 300 minors have been detained longer than the 20-day legal limit. DHS and ICE haven't responded to questions about medical care inside of that facility. But then when we talk about the fact that these operations are ballooning and will go to other places, let's zero in on Maine. Because immigrant rights activists say they're seeing increased immigration enforcement activity in the rural part of the state, raising concerns about disruptions for families and businesses there. The Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition says it's received reports of a raid near farm worker housing in Skowhegan last week that witnesses say led to more than a dozen arrests. The group fears it could signal a new phase of enforcement following January's Operation Catch of the Day surge in Portland and Lewiston. A spokesperson for Republican Senator Susan Collins says federal officials described the Skowhegan case as part of a long-running targeted Customs and Border Protection operation, not the resumption of a recent surge. Collins had said she spoke to Kristi Noem and that the surge was going away. Governor Janet Mills and members of Maine's congressional delegation say they're still seeking answers, though, as advocates warn some rural families are now sheltering in place out of fear. ICE and CBP haven't confirmed the arrests in Skowhegan or a separate case reported the same day in Brunswick. But I think, Vaughn, it's a reminder of what Heilman was saying there, which is that just because they are ending their operation in large part in Minneapolis, doesn't mean that it didn't have the intended effect of showing what they can do in these communities, even if the communities, out of protest and out of resilience, end up pushing them out. But it also goes to show what it might look like in other places. And for lawmakers like Susan Collins, who made a show of saying, I talked to Kristi Noem, they are drawing down the enforcement operations in Lewiston, in Portland, it doesn't mean that they're not doing more in other places.
If you're explaining, you're losing. And this administration is now attempting to try to explain away. We have seen for a decade Republican politicians fear Donald Trump. We have seen U.S. allies, Greenland, Canada, trading partners fear Donald Trump. Yeah. We have seen changes domestically to policies from SNAP cuts, health care cuts, folks that are seeking gender-affirming care. We have seen Americans face the consequences of Trump administration policies. But what is different about this in the year of 2025 and now into 2026 is the visceral running of children, Americans, some who are undocumented, some who came here seeking asylum or here as temporary residents, are literally running away from the Trump administration. And you and I will not be able to wholly understand what the long-term consequences of that are in American society, because those very kids are going to outlive all of us in the resentment and the fear of the American government. I think that we are only at the very beginning days of beginning to understand what that will ultimately reap decades from now.
Yeah, on a day that we are looking back at our history on President's Day, we are very much writing our first chapter of it for the present day right now.